Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Eskrima podcast. I'm Jason Inayan and I'm an Inayan Eskrima. So today I wanted to talk about footwork. At least the first subject is footwork, right? So on Mondays I have a private lesson student and we work on footwork because that's the thing he wants to work on. And I couch that inside of Indonesian and Filipino footwork, use of the double knife as an instrument to give him coordination as well as other things. It's interesting with this particular student, I actually used to teach him and another guy back in the early 2000s, and they learned for a while. Mostly they learned knife defense. That's what they focused on because they're very self-defense oriented. And he went on to do Krav Maga, which is how I got to know him in the first place. Is my student who runs one of the largest Krav Maga schools, at least in the Bay Area. At one time they had over 1,000 students. But he went to Krav Maga. I assume he got a higher rank. I'm not sure what, maybe a black belt. And then was doing private lessons for Muay Thai and things like that, probably because he wanted to punch and kick and elbow and knee better. Who knows? But then he reaches out to me unsolicited, and he goes, I need to come back to you and learn because I need footwork. It kind of reminds me of another story about something that my Uncle Dan said about someone who's very, one of his former students, or current students really, who's really well known for, full contact fighting and things like that. It's reality based, powerful hitting, as opposed to just doing like drilling and all that other stuff. And and you get this kind of sentiment from a lot of people when they come into the martial arts and they're doing it. They're all about like, this is what really works, and the other stuff doesn't work, so I'm not gonna put any time into it. It's almost like that Jeet Kune Do, sentiment of absorb, what is useful, add what is wholly your own, and discard what is whatever, right? Which, is interesting. It might be, that there's just a lack of maturity. It's like a lot of people that say, I said, I don't know, one of my DVDs, disarms, people are saying disarms are like, they're useless, they're fancy techniques, they'll never really happen in real life. I mean, if you watched one of my last episodes, just the last one, to talk about one of my students disarming someone who attacks them with a knife, right? It could be just that you suck, right? Like, that comes from my own personal reflection of trying to do techniques inside sparring and reflex drills, or just, full contact fights, and I don't make them work, or they don't work out for me. And it's probably because I sucked at that and I need to practice it. It's not that it doesn't work, it's just that I couldn't make it work. So, you look at it and you get someone who comes back to you. So you get a student that comes back to you and they just want to do footwork, you think, at least I think, well, of course, because footwork is essential, right? Footwork is the thing that you use to control distance, right? And the ability to control distance leaves you with the ability at higher levels to control timing. How long it's going to take for you to get there, how long it's going to take for them to get to you, right? How little time it may take you to defend and everything else. Now there's the rest of it, how you use your arms and how you angle your body and how you react to other stimuli other than proximity. But footwork that's the thing, right? I was in Las Vegas and I was showing them some of the things that happen in Inayan Serrada when it comes to using formal feeds as a teaching tool, and what kind of techniques might be hidden in there. And a lot of that comes down to footwork as well, at the deeper levels, although people don't really want to practice that because it's boring. It's not a technique. It's like everybody's looking for the shiny stuff, right? But they don't spend time digging deep in what they would feel might be the mundane, and finding something there that's really honestly a treasure, right? And it comes down to that footwork again. With your formal feeds in Inayan Serrada, right, the way that I teach it, right, the way that my father taught it to me. My teachers, like Uncle Master Jimmy Tacosa, he was my teacher, especially at the age of like 9 to 11, right? And then, my father, obviously, from the age of 4 to 27 when he passed away, right? They would teach me to do these things and call my attention to where is the weight on your foot, right? Which logic would give you, if you're still paying attention years later, decades later, not only is where is the weight on my foot, or where is my weight on each foot, but how does my weight transfer from one part of my foot to another, from one foot to another. And as we look at counters, whether we're doing empty hand, which in the Inayan System of Eskrima is called Karina de Mano. Like if we get Arnis de Mano, Mano, Kali hands, right? There's lots of different names. Panan Tukin, right? Panan Jatman, all these different names for empty hand Filipino martial arts, right? Any other style, weaponless, whatever. You're working footwork, and what you need to do is you need to pay attention to how you're using your feet, because that's where the interesting parts are, right? Like, I seem to shuffle a little bit as I, step out with my right foot. Well, it might be that you're doing a slight weight shift back and forth to reposition your feet before you step, which isn't necessary. Like I have this other student, they've been training for, 37 years, 30 years, pretty high level Taekwondo person. And, teaching that person footwork, and they're like, well, why do I do it that way? I'm like, because you're shifting your weight constantly back and forth in micro shifts, if you will, to reposition and then step. The effect over time, or rather over extreme stimuli, because you're under stress, you're scared, you're angry, whatever, you have adrenaline, is larger shifts, which mean more time, right? Being efficient with your footwork not only controls distance, but also controls the amount of time it requires for you to do anything, right? So, thinking of my student that I teach on Mondays that came back, footwork's essential, right? Footwork is essential. It's the thing that is bringing us to and from the fight, that is keeping us always out of their range and always in our range, right? That ability to master relative positioning, the concept of relative positioning through footwork, allows you to be much more dangerous than simply like, I got the next technique down, or I got the next drill down, or any of those things. Because my Uncle Dan, he's in his response, he's like, well, you got to do the drills. Because the guy comes back and goes, well, why can't I do all these techniques, these disarms and these things? And he goes, well, you got to practice, is what he's saying, right? You got to practice the things that are not overt. You got to practice things that are not obvious. Yeah, obviously, if I hit you really hard, you're going to get better, or you're just going to quit, or you're just, you're going to lose the fight, whatever. Obviously, if I go faster. Yeah. And there is something to be had there, definitely. Right? Definitely something there. But, even with disarms, right? It's that practice. So that becomes second nature, just like the block becomes second nature, just like your footwork would become second nature, right? It's these essential little pieces that we like to gloss over because we'd rather learn a drill. I like it too. Like, when I go train at my Uncle Danny's school, the best part of it isn't that I learn anything necessarily. And to a degree, it's great to meet all the people. That's cool too, right? Old friends, new friends, all that stuff, common interests, all that things. I mean, it's not the same as meeting up with people that do Inayan, but it's pretty cool. It's fun, right? But I gotta tell you, for me, the best thing is I get to be a student. I get to put that white belt mindset, as they call it in martial arts, on, and keep it on, as opposed to looking at it from the point of view of a intermediate, advanced, expert, or instructor, whatever it is, the role that I'm playing with a given individual, depending upon the art that I do. So, footwork, practice, and getting better at things are just kind of like the important parts that are much more important than, getting to the next technique or drill or exercise so that I can tick off boxes, so that I can change the color of the thing I wear around my waist, or the t-shirt or the glove or whatever ranking device that you have. Those ranking devices, as you get more advanced, the titles, all that stuff, they stop being about you. Unless, of course, you're doing martial arts and staying in martial arts for social status, right? Some people, they do that, right? To give them a certain sense of importance, right? And that's okay, right? If it keeps them in the art, I think that's a good thing, right? There's always too much of a good thing, right? But it's okay, it's fine, right? But that social status, at least for a lot of the advanced people that I work with inside the Keelahana Martial Arts Association, or inside of the Inayan Instructor Association. And when we get up there, we're all instructors. We're just instructors. It's not who's who or what's what. In fact, you don't even know the rank or the title of another instructor in the Inayan Instructor Association unless you see their certificate or ask them. Otherwise, we're just instructors, right? So that's kind of interesting, right? But it's more about you and what you're putting into yourself than it is about that device or that title or how it might make you feel or whatever, right? It's about where you stand before other people in terms of, are you a chapter ahead in the book? Are you 2 chapters ahead in the book? I mean, you don't have to wait to finish the book and master the book before you start teaching the book in many cases, depending on what you're teaching for, right? But it's more about, them being able to know, them being more junior people, being able to know who they should be listening to, who has credence in their argument or what they postulate, simply because they've been through it a little bit longer, they've done a little bit longer, maybe they've contributed a bit more. Time isn't the sole indicator, however, of prowess or mastery or authority, right? You could be hanging out for 20 years at the school or the local dojo and still not know anything, be stupid and suck. That's true too, because you still have to do the work, right? You can't just show up and hope that that's enough. You have to show up and do the work, right? But it's not just for you, that title or that rank, right? It's something else, right? It's something deeper, and that deeper is it's for us, right? Right? I know who to listen to when someone says that's the person's authority. And as a student, I have to let go of my own ego, at least for the moment, right? And say to myself, I can learn something from this person. They might know something I don't know. And the truth is that's always the case. Everyone in a room, when you come in to train, is going to know or do something that you don't know about. That's why I love working out with new people. They're going to move in a way that I haven't seen before necessarily, certainly haven't trained against, and might not have an answer for. And that opportunity is getting me one step closer to a deeper sense of what I know, a deeper sense of knowledge. And that comes back to the footwork, practicing more footwork exercises, right? And finding different ways to utilize my footwork and pay attention to what's happening with my weight, where my weight is between my legs, one leg or the other, where my weight is on each foot. Is it on the ball? Is it on the blade? Is it flat? Is it on the toe? And what am I doing with that footwork, right? If I'm flat-footed, am I grappling, right? If I'm narrow stanced, am I striking, right? And when I strike with white stance, what effect does that have, right? All of those things come down to doing work. And when I give the time to my teacher, right, that recognition they give back to me is solely about the work that I've done and the time that I've given. And that is really useful for the instructor looking down at that student, not actually looking down, but looking at that student going, okay, here's where we've ranked you or titled you or whatever. I have an idea without having known you. This is only important in large organizations like the Inayan Training Organization. I can look at a student that I haven't taught and I can say, what's their rank? One of my gurus will say, oh, sir, he's a black sash, or he's a second level student, or whatever, right? And I'll look at them and I'll go, okay, I have a reasonable idea of what they should know. And and what they should be working on, and I can start teaching them without knowing. That's super useful. And then for the student who's really just climbing up, you remember when black belts just meant that you were ready to train, not that you were an expert. So you're going through that and doing the training and stuff like that, and you're looking for each rank, whether you're using a belt system, a sash system, you're using the medallions that we use in 9 training orders, 9 system of Eskrima, right? Whatever it is, they are milestones. They give you a marker of what it looks like to do that. You look at someone and you're like, in the Inayan System of Eskrima, you're a gold sash. You're almost to first level. You're almost to your green sash, right? And you look at a guy that's in a green sash, and he's got his first level, and he's been there for maybe a minute, right? And they're moving a certain way, and they know certain things. That's your milestone. They act as a living, breathing milestone of where you need to progress. Will you be exactly like them? No, because you're you. But you have an idea. You have something to work towards. Will you be better than them? Maybe. Depends on the kind of work you put in. Will they be better than you? They will always be a little bit more advanced than you, as long as they keep coming and you keep coming. Or as long as they keep going and you stop going, right? But if you continue to go, you might pass them up, because you spent more time doing the drills and the work and the exercise that maybe you didn't want to at first, but now you're doing it, right? So, footwork, right? That's so important. It's a really good example of what's important, but it's also a great way to talk about how you need to do the work in a very granular level, very fine level, looking at every single detail. Do it as you do a technique. Pay attention to your footwork, step correctly, angle your hips correctly. See how that changes the way your shoulders move, changes your range, changes for each arm, right? Do your footwork in your reflex drills, in your flow drills, in your sparring. Go back from your sparring and go, hey, that was weird. I was trying to do something. It didn't work. It was like I had to lean over, whatever your observation is. Go back to that basic drill or exercise or technique that addresses that and go, that's strange. I need to work on that. Here's what I need to do. And then bring it out in your drilling. Bring that out in your reflex exercises and your stress drills. Then bring it back to the sparring, see if you've made a change. Keep going back and forth. And what happens is, just through investing time in footwork, you're able to produce magical effects, almost. Magical effects. So the last thing I wanted to talk about today was, so I was teaching grappling. We do a Dumont class on Monday nights. And the biggest difference is against other grappling arts, other than seating in Filipino and in Indonesian martial arts and Inayan methodology, and adding Jeet Kune Do and a bunch of other stuff to that Spider Dumont program, is if you're doing just the grappling portion, which is really just our blue belt curriculum, you're trying to figure that out with understanding that a knife may be introduced, not as like okay, now that you're really good at grappling, we're going to add a knife. No, but just like, because we're working towards a street application, and weapons are ubiquitous in modern society in general. Doesn't matter where you go, right? As an example, knives are completely illegal in the United Kingdom, in England, and Scotland. They have the worst knife crime of everywhere. They have the worst, and the way that people use knives to hurt people there, not just out of violence, but because of the they have the gang attacks, if you will. The way that they use knives and how they do it is just horrific, right? I won't get into that, but anyways, but I'm teaching the grappling class last night, and what comes to my mind is, as I'm teaching, is this idea that Sun Tzu has about, to have an undefeatable attack where they do not defend, to have unbeatable defense, right? Defend where they do not attack. So I'm coaching these guys through their thing, and I'm like, why are you fighting this thing over here? He's already there. Move to another attack. Move to another position or something like that, right? And it's this idea that we don't, I hit you with an angle 1 and you block it, so I hit you with more 1s. Right? Or for boxing, and I hit you with a jab, and you're really good at defending that jab, so I know what I'll do. I'll go harder and faster with my jabs. I end up going back to my uncle going, hey, why can't I do all these fancy techniques? Because you've got to drill, and you've got to exercise, and you've got to practice. But you can't just practice the physical things. You got to practice the tactics too. You got to practice the strategy. Like as an example, Serrada's strategy, Inayan Serrada's strategy, is to be able to stand your ground or move forward. Use your live hand to inhibit your opponent's ability to attack and defend while you attack freely, right? That's really basically all it is. There's a little bit of defanging the snake, but there's a lot of head blows, a lot of knee blows. Traditionally, there's a lot of foot attacks, right? And then there's the joint locking, right? But you're doing that while you're trying to maintain a sense of freedom of motion, while the other person is being inhibited by your live hand, which could be pushing, could be pulling, could be just slapping, could be, trapping. All these different things to inhibit, interrupt both timing and freedom of motion of your opponent, right? So it's interesting to see how like the old wise men of the day and their wisdom comes out in present day, and how we can utilize that to train. Ping Fa, or Sun Tzu's book Art of War, is a very, very important book to practice in any martial arts. Is a book that my father required me to read, and I highly recommend you read it too. Anyways, we'll see you on the mat.